So I'm going to start off with the presentation tonight. I'm going to just give a little bit of overview of what we do here. And then we have some students that are graduating. So they've just completed our program. I guess it was in February, March timeframe. And we did have this scheduled for last month, but with everything that just happened, we had to scramble for how we were going to do the presentation. So we decided to put it off a month because it was originally planned to be in person at Venture Cafe. So now we're having it now, or we're decided how we're going to do this and do the presentation. So doing it tonight. Yeah, and so we'll go. And after I give a presentation, just a really quick one, the students are going to take over and they're going to talk about the project they built, talk about how it got there, tell a little bit about themselves. And then we're going to follow it up with a panel discussion. So anyone that's here that wants to maybe get into programming, or if there's recruiters, you could ask them questions to see what their story was like. All right, so I'll go and share the screen. All right, so Nexul Academy is this training program that these students just went through. We have a number of different training programs. We start with a preparation 101 program. This is our meetup group. So if you came through our meetup group, it's that. So we always publish new workshops to that. There's mentors always there to help you work through whatever topic we're going through, and there's no cost to those. We do have things you can a project you can go through to show that you're ready for a full training program. And if you get to that point, or when you get to that point, you can move along to our full-time, full-stack training program. Our meetup group kind of looks like this. It's on meetup.com. St. Louis Coding Apprenticeship Prep is the name of the group. And then that leads into our immersive 212 program. That's what the students presenting tonight have completed. We go into more depth in HTML and CSS than we did in our preparation, because we spent a full week on that, of 6 sessions of about 3 hours apiece. And then we go into ASP.NET Core Fundamentals, Angular Essentials, so we get the basic skills built up on those 2 technology platforms. And then we move into more advanced topics in ASP.NET Core, then more advanced topics in Angular Advanced, and then we get into SQL databases, and then Docker to put it all together and get it deployed. All those programs are fully instructor-led. We have a team project that goes along with that, and that's what the students tonight are going to present. And the school is certified by Missouri Department of Higher Education. And I think Jaron was going to be here and talk about that, but I'm not sure he showed up. So our graduating cohort this year, we had 3 students. This is our first cohort of students. We've got more students in our next cohort that's ongoing right now. And we are currently enrolling for our next cohorts at the end of May and end of June. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to the student presenters.
Okay.
So I've stopped sharing. I think, Michelle, were you going to do this?
Yep, I have picked up. I am going to start the slide deck.
Okay.
Let's start it over here. All right. So, speaking at least for myself, I can just say that coding is something that I've been interested in for a long time, but it was, at least in my particular case, I just wasn't kind of getting to the level that I wanted to when I found out about Nexul. And it was a much more fluid and informative mentorship. And Nevin and Ryan, I think, were sort of in similar spots. I don't know. You guys want to say anything?
Good. Yeah, I was going to say, just for me, I think it was definitely something I always had an interest in. Well, computers in general, and but personally, I always kind of felt like programming was, I never excelled at like math and different things like that when I was in school, and I'm 34, so when I was in high school, anybody who was interested in programming was going to go to computer science and stuff like that, and so I always kind of had myself convinced that that's just maybe that's not a good fit for me for whatever reason for a long time. So, but that's just my 2 cents.
Michael won't let me get away with not speaking right now, so I'll just go ahead and do it. But I'd been teaching myself for a couple of years. I had an idea to try to help. I used to be an occupational therapist. So I had an idea to help gather resources for therapists just coming out of school. So I was working on trying to build that, and then I just found out I actually like programming more than I liked occupational therapy, and so I'd been self-studying for a number of years, and then that's where I just kind of ran into Michael at one of his meetups, and just started realizing that I kind of needed I was at a point where I really needed a mentor. Just kind of I had all the pieces, I just needed help putting them together. So, and that's really what Nexul helped me do.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I think we were all. So we started in the August 2019 cohort. And it was quite a journey. The first gentleman you heard talking was Ryan, and this is Ryan's background. He told you a little bit about that and contacts. And Nevin was the second, and here's a little bit of his background that he was telling you about, and contact. And this is me. I was actually teaching. And those are just, I was the only one that was willing to do strengths and weaknesses. They just didn't like that part. So here are some, not all, but some of the things we were focused on, either enhancing or learning. And I think, and all of us were kind of at different levels on that. Like I'd never seen Docker or TypeScript. Some of us had, some of us hadn't. And the things that I had already seen were much more enhanced and much more concentrated by this program. And then these were the frameworks, the main focus frameworks, or some of them, I probably left one or two out, that we went on. And then that was the thing that sort of like put all the pieces together for us, was Nexul itself. And so at the end of our 6-month fun ride, we had begun and since then have finished the building of this app, which is called Roba. And it is an app. Nevin, you would probably be the best person to talk about this because this was your brainchild.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a simple app. Actually, you have to go to the next slide. I just tried to do that and it didn't work, of course. So these are the questions, and then this is the solution. You know, have you ever lent anything out to a friend and then forgotten who you lent it to or when you lent it, or, you know, I've done that multiple times. So, you know, Roba is just a simple application that allows you to track and keep track of who you lend it to. So, yeah.
Which sounds easy enough, but there's a lot of wiring on the programming side that goes into it. So these are the stats, 3 users. So we have 100% of the market share. It was deployed using Azure Web Services for reliability, and then it was secured with the JWT auth. And then this is the team, just so that is Nevin on the left and with his contact, and Ryan in the middle. That is not quite a true shot of his hair, by the way. And then there's me. All right, and I am going to stop the share because is Ryan doing the demo?
No, I'll take the demo, and Ryan will talk.
Okay, I'm stopping the share now.
Okay, I'm just pulling up my stuff here. Oh. I'm actually going to sign out and start from the beginning. Well,
so we used a just a kind of, because I feel like we didn't go into really a whole lot of depth on what we applied on this app, based on what we learned through Nexul Academy. So this is a .NET Core web API with a Angular front end, and basically, and I'm sorry if there's some issues with the site. I deployed it and I had some issues with the SSL setup, so there was some goofiness with that. But we basically did auth all through Microsoft. So if you get a chance to try it out, it's a Microsoft sign-in. We set up a landing page, as you can see here. This was mainly Michelle's work. She, I will gladly say, has a little bit better of an eye for design and things that just look good. So she put this together for us. Just kind of a nice little landing page that kind of explains what Roba app is and what you use it for. At the top, we have a login button to go ahead and log into the app. When you click the login button, it's going to redirect you to the Angular front end. This landing page is a Razor page that is coming out of the .NET side. So whenever it goes to Angular, it's going to a login page that's then going to basically make a call to the API. It's going to call out to Microsoft sign-in, pull in redirect you to their sign-in page, let you sign in. It saves your initial URL so that when it gets a good return back, it's going to go ahead and redirect you back to the front page, which is actually the items component from the Angular side. So we set up through Angular authenticated guards so that whenever you navigate to either your user profile or the items page, it's going to make sure that you're a verified user. It's going to verify that and then let you, add items, remove items, and everything. And so, Nevin, if you could go ahead and log in, and we'll go from there.
I'm already logged in, so I'll just exit out of this incognito window here.
Oh, sorry. I'm just seeing on the screen share, I'm just seeing the landing page. There we go. Now, Nevin put together a majority of the items component here on the Angular front end. As you can see, we've got a simple just add plus button to add an item, and the whole idea here is just you can add a book, a movie, video game, different things like that, and you can basically go ahead and click lend out on that item card and place on there who you have loaned that item to. So we just loan that item to Ned. We pull up our items page, we can see that Ned has it. All of this is using the API that we set up on the .NET backend that's, pulling that from a SQL database that's deployed through Azure right now. So that was really interesting, just kind of going through that whole process of setting up a database in Azure and deploying an app through Azure. There was a lot more that went into it than I really imagined when I first did it. So, there was a lot to think about. There's still a few things that I think we need to do in setting that up. Nevin, do you want to talk about any of the, like view and delete and features like that? I hate to.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I have to actually So we had a change of plans. I wasn't originally the person that was going to demo this, so I don't have an image tag ready. So with items, as you log in, you're immediately brought to your items. They are, as they're put in the database, they're specific to each user. So you won't see anyone else's items or anything like that, and no one sees your items. We don't have any social networking set up or anything like that. So all of that is just kind of self-contained. So, you know, we kind of already showed the lend out, and if you press return, it immediately goes to back to when it was created. If you want to add an item, I don't know. We'll just put down X-Men.
Yeah, guys, sorry, I apologize. I had this all set up to demo, and for some reason, because of the SSL issues I described earlier, it's not letting me actually access the site, and everyone else apparently can. So it's really odd, but anyway, I just wanted to explain that.
Yeah, so anyway, that's why I'm not prepared, so sorry about that. So that immediately showed up front. You know, I think in future directions, I want to reverse the flow so the newest item goes to the top, but there's a little bit of wiring that goes into that, so need to set that up. So then if you go to the view, this is the details page. You can, you know, change the name, you know, if you really like the sequel more or whatever, and, you know, you could change it to a book if you wanted to. But as you see, that was updated. And then if you want to delete it, you know, it's right there, and it's deleted. And that's about it for items. For the whole Angular site, we're using material design. So that's about it for items.
Yeah, so when we first thought of this app, you know, obviously Nevin and I and Michelle had a lot of really grand ideas for what we could do. I know personally I was kind of envisioning something that would be kind of like that whole sharing economy type of situation where you could connect with your family members or your friends or neighbors, and basically see what kind of things they have that they're willing to share or let other people borrow, and vice versa. And so we have plans that we're going to continue to work on this and try to implement at least some features like that, where you can actually you know, look up or connect with your you know, set up auth through Facebook and the Facebook API potentially to, you know, go ahead and be able to connect with your friends so that you can see, you know, what items they have. And beyond that, you know, some more options with items, such as being able to set the shareability of that item. Like, is this something that you only want your like closest family to be able to see and share with, or is this something that you're okay with friends or friends of friends seeing and hitting you up about? Which obviously leads you to, you know, setting up maybe messaging or maybe just handle that all through Facebook. So we had a lot of ideas like this that we thought it'd be a lot of fun to implement, and we're going to be continuing to work on this project even after we're done here with Nexul, to just keep learning new things and implement new ideas with it. So beyond that, you can log out, and with auth, the way that that's handled, it's setting in your local storage a current user, whether or not that current user is anonymous or if it's been authenticated. So whenever you log out of the app, it's clearing that. There's still some things that I think we need to clear up with it, as far as with the way it handles authentication. Personally, I have multiple Microsoft accounts that I use either for work or this or that. And so I've noticed that I've got some issues that I need to debug with the app as far as how it handles authentication if I've previously logged in with a different Microsoft account, that kind of thing. So it's been a huge learning experience. I know Auth for me, when we went over it through Nexul Academy, was just really, really tough. It was, a lot of new concepts to
Still really tough.
Right, a lot of new concepts to learn, and it's just it took a lot of repetition and just like kind of stepping through the code and actually seeing what's happening, and I still don't completely understand it. I still got a lot to learn about how all of this works. So it was a lot of fun to kind of go through that and recreate the concepts that we learned in class in this app. As simple as it might look, it was it was definitely an experience to kind of go through that and take the time to implement it in a new application. I don't know if anybody has anything else that they want to add about that, but beyond that, I would say just the other thing that I learned the most out of this whole experience was just the importance of, communication within your team. One thing I think we kind of failed to really talk about through this was, we learned a lot about the Agile process and just kind of best practices in development, through Nexul Academy. And unfortunately, we weren't the best at implementing those. We learned a lot of lessons from how important it is to be clear and communicate and stuff like that. And so it's just, I don't think I can really quantify how much I've gotten out of this and just through that experience. It's been really, really worthwhile. And I'll kind of slow my ramble there for a little bit. And I just wanted to let everyone else kind of have a chance to comment on the experience of going through this project and process.
Michelle, did you get a chance to say anything about how the front end was implemented on the landing page?
Ryan actually talked about it a little bit, that we used Razor pages. I was personally kind of frustrated by what was available to me on Angular, Angular is great, but it's a little bit, I didn't have the skill level to really customize it. And it looks, a lot of times Angular pages, to me, I can spot them from about 100 paces, and I wanted this just to be a little bit more unique. And really had no idea that was even a possibility until Michael told me, oh yeah, you just go through Razor and you do everything, you can use it just like you would HTML and CSS. And this is really, this whole slideshow and everything is built really just HTML and CSS through these Razor pages. Of course, there were a couple little nicks and bumps along the way when you're trying to knit together all these different things, but it was worth it because it gave me because artistically it appealed to me more than I was able to make any of the Angular stuff behave the way that I wanted it to. Thanks, Nevin. Do you want me to go, Michael, would you prefer that we go back to the Zoom, or do you want me just to go to take the screen and then go back to our contact stuff?
Did you have another slide or two? I don't remember if you had more slides.
No, so the slide just goes through the threes, the 1, 2, 3s. And then when you hit the grid will pull up and show.
I think you meant on the other slideshow.
No, I don't think so. I think I went through them all.
Okay. Do you mind just pulling up the team info about the three of you for the panel?
Yeah, Nevin, I'm going to need the screen for that. All right, give me 1 sec.
Yeah, you should have it.
Yeah, if you could just put it on the panel with your 3 contact info.
Here we go.
Yeah, if you guys didn't have anything about the project right now, we'll go ahead and enter the panel discussion. This will be a chance that anybody that's attending can, take turns unmuting their mic to ask any of the panelists a question, anything about experience going through the program or challenges they found building the application or anything else along the way, anything about their job search process or anything else. I will go ahead and kick it off with one question just to get the juices flowing just a little bit for attendees. I just asked, what made you want to become a developer? So let's just each one of you go through that.
Yeah, so I could start. I'll just say, so whenever I got started with Nexul Academy, so my background, I always kind of floated towards just more technical things, and I worked for a long time actually for Charter Communications doing general internet and desktop support, just kind of basic troubleshooting and tech support kind of stuff, and did a lot of stuff with customer support and customer service and that kind of thing. I eventually got laid off from Charter at one point and had an opportunity to start a job with a small software company here in St. Louis in their customer service department. And I really excelled there and learned the software really quickly and kind of became a subject matter expert on that system. And then just through working there and working closely with the development team on different bugs and different things that our customers and stuff would report and that kind of thing, I started to get more and more interested in programming. And I'd always had like a general interest in it as far as like, oh, that sounds interesting, and I'd maybe kind of look into it a little bit, but for whatever reason, I'd always just kind of like let myself get discouraged about it. But the more and more I learned, the more I became confident that, this sounds like something that I could do, and I'm interested in it. So I started kind of taking on small projects at work, started learning JavaScript and just kind of some basic stuff like that, HTML, just, the bare minimums, kind of going through self-learning type of stuff. I started looking into, opportunities to learn. And, I applied for example, some of the other, stuff that's in St. Louis, I don't know why it just left my brain, but it's like the biggest free coding thing. Yeah, Launch Code. I applied for Launch Code several times and didn't get in, and started looking at opportunities, and I was like, this would be worth it to invest in and actually pay for, because I was learning a lot on my own. But me personally, I felt like I learned better in a more structured environment and stuff like that. So anyway, so I met Michael through actually through the St. Louis Tech Slack, because he had posted on there, and I just kind of reached out and talked to him. And I was interested because he was one of the main boot camps that I found that focused on a .NET stack with C# as a focus and Angular as the front end, and that's something that I was really interested in. So, but to kind of circle back, I mean, the main reason that I got interested in becoming a programmer was just prior interest in kind of related subjects, and then being exposed to the field through the software company that I worked at for a long time. And I forgot to mention, but I eventually moved into doing software QA for that company, and so I got more and more exposure to the code, and that's what really motivated me to learn more and take that leap of faith.
Nevin?
Yeah. Just a warning. My baby doesn't want to go to sleep, so my 9-month-old doesn't want to go to sleep. So if you hear him in the background, I'm sorry. But anyway, so I kind of went into my story a little bit. I had an idea for a website to help other people in my previous profession, just kind of either connect or whatever. And just started kind of going down that programming path, and you know, the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. I never really realized how much I want to know why things work until I started learning programming, and so it's really, you know, I'm 34, so I really didn't think I was going to change careers or anything like that, but you know, I'm glad I have, and in fact, I left therapy in December after being in this program for a couple of months, and started an internship with a local company on the Illinois side called One Space, and I primarily do. Well, I'm an apprentice, so I primarily I don't even this program, the stuff that you learn at Nexul is very transferable, because, you know, in Nexul we learn Angular and .NET and C#, and as an apprentice, I work with jQuery. I work with Node scripts, or, you know, JavaScript on the back end, and I work primarily with React, and you know, I feel like I am well prepared for that. So I mean, that's where I've been, and that's where I'm at right now. So Michelle, if you'd like to take over.
Well, mine is, it's part of my plot to live forever. So I just really wanted something to kind of like bend my brain, which this really did, because my strengths have always been sort of like the liberal arts, that type of thing. So I came across something from Launch Code. I don't even know. It was very weird. It just sort of like dropped in my lap. And so I did a little bit with them, and it was really enjoyable, but I was going to need, personally, because this was such a unique discipline for me personally, I was going to need a lot more structure and a lot more mentoring. And so that's how it was actually someone from Launch Code who suggested that I look at this on a meetup. But yeah, mine was really just like, wow, you know, I would really like to keep my brain just active and going. And this has definitely been a challenge for it.
All right, does anyone else want to ask a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So I know Ryan mentioned that he was in QA testing. Were you doing manual testing, and has your QA skill set helped you in this project?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was primarily vast majority of it was manual testing. And I actually found that to be a bit of a struggle because unfortunately the company I was working for went through quite a few transfers of ownership at one point, which was kind of exciting, kind of cool, but unfortunately eventually led to a lot of layoffs and stuff. So when I was reapplying, I found out that, you know, I was really lacking in a lot of the skills that I really needed if I wanted to continue a career as QA. And I still really like QA, and to answer the other part of that, it's definitely helped me as far as especially testing on the front end, just helped me with finding my mistakes a little bit quicker, just because I'm used to going in and just trying silly, weird, you know, just whatever I can to try to break something. And so I definitely feel like that helped me a lot.
Great, anyone else?
Yeah, I got kind of a handful of questions if you're ready for them. First off, I kind of want to mention that after like interviewing a lot of candidates, and as well as going through a bunch of interviews over my career, it's really valuable to have a project like this that you can talk about, because a lot of times when you talk about a project like that you're doing at your day job, sometimes it comes across as a little bit of a negative, but sharing more about a project like this and what you're learning from it is very valuable. So I'm just curious, I was going to just ask you some kind of softball questions, more curiosity. So like, what version of Angular did you use for this?
We used 8. That was the current version when we were in the boot camp.
Okay. What about .NET? What version did you use for that?
2.2.
2. Cool. And SQL Server?
I'm pretty sure the SQL servers, I thought 2017. Is that right? It's
I honestly can't remember. I'm sorry.
Well,
That's
it's
the one.
Azure right now, right?
Yeah, it's the Azure
A web version.
SQL that I set up. Yeah.
Cool. And what kind of made you want to use material design over some of the other design frameworks out there?
Well, material was used in the items. So on the landing page, that was not material design. So Nevin used material design on the items. So he would
Okay.
be best to speak to that.
Yeah. So I'd used Bootstrap in the past, and I like Bootstrap. I just wanted to try something new, and just see how Angular did things. I know that that's if you ever went into Android native app development, that's what they use something similar for Android. So I just wanted to have some experience with it, and then that's what the boot camp also taught. But that's why.
Gotcha. Cool. So when it comes to working as a group, how did you kind of divide up work and just kind of track features? Did you use any tools, or you just kind of what was your flow there?
Yeah, so we used Trello for and I apologize, that's actually something I meant to mention earlier. But yeah, we used Trello for we created several boards. So we created one for more kind of like a higher level, kind of like this is how we want things to work, and then we broke that out into smaller stories that we put on a main Trello board, and just kind of
Okay.
it wasn't like we didn't really follow like a sprint type of thing. It was definitely more of like a Kanban type of situation or whatever, where we kind of worked through that. And then as far as dividing it up, I mean, it was kind of like a volunteer kind of thing. Nevin kind of volunteered to grab the item service. I volunteered to, grab the API and a lot of back-end stuff. It's just kind of, I don't know, I feel like it kind of happened more naturally than really anything in that respect.
Cool. And were you able to, I know you're kind of pressed for time in general and doing the project itself, were you able to find time to kind of work in unit testing? And if so, like what areas of the app did you apply that?
So we definitely, test-driven design is something that or development was something that we talked about in the boot camp. We did not implement it here. But one thing I can say that's been really interesting. So I, as I mentioned earlier before we started, I got a job as a junior developer with a consultant, and I actually have gotten to implement some of that in some of my work projects. So I had to create a new feature for this HR app, and I started that with, and this was at the direction of my boss. He kind of was like, hey, let's do it this way. And because he knew I needed some experience with that. And so we approached that from that point. And so I created all the unit tests, and then I went from there. And that was using XUnit, and you know what, I think there was another dependency maybe that we used with that. I can't remember, but I really liked it actually. And I loved that the tests, if I changed anything and it broke something, I knew right away. And that was really, really cool. And I like that a lot. So I hope to kind of do that more in the future.
Cool. Yeah, I wrote it. I don't mean to dominate the questions. I just want to ask all that. But it's actually a pretty cool project to kind of share with whoever you're going to be speaking with regarding employment, whatnot, and to build off of too. I think you can do some more neat stuff with it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question or two?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions myself. First, here's a light one. Where did the name come from? What made you decide on the name for the app?
Yeah, it's just it's Italian for stuff, and that's it.
Yeah.
So how long did you spend trying to pick a name?
10 minutes.
It really was no process.
I thought you guys Googled stuff for a while. Like, what does this mean? What does that mean?
I don't know. It was like in November.
Yeah.
I've been working on this project for a while. I can't remember.
One that's a little bit more involved. It can be said that like an artist never actually completes their work, but there's always a deadline to come up against. What features did you have planned that didn't make it into the app before the presentation?
So if you noticed, I had to manually enter a URL for the picture. User experience wise, you know, I showed my wife and she was like, I'm not going to have to do that if I use this. And I'm like, well, right now you are. And so user experience wise, we would like to have an image upload and then a crop. One of the items that I had in there was actually a little, just the spacing in the actual material card wasn't quite right, and that can easily be solved if we have a image upload, a cropper, and then saving it to our database instead of using just a string.
Authentication aside, what would you say would be the most challenging aspect of the project that you faced putting it together?
Quarantine.
Sorry, what was that?
Quarantine.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah. Personally for me,
yeah.
I think the best answer to that question is just, you know, I mean, working with the group is always challenging, especially I think one of the biggest challenges we all faced was that, you know, we're all working full time. We're all, you know, got families, and Nevin has a newborn, for example. And so juggling just life in general, along with working on a project like this, you know, because I mean, we were going to classes in the evening and working full time after that, and then having time to kind of do the homework, so to speak, of just what we were learning in class, and then on top of that, you know, finding the extra time to work, you know, an hour here, an hour there on the project, and just kind of, you know, get that all worked in. I think for me anyway, that was the biggest challenge, because, you know, I've got 20 different things wanting to pull me in different directions. You know, and that's why for anybody who I could give any advice to, it would just be, you know, don't let, you know, just start early. You know, I started doing this kind of late, and I wish I had started a lot earlier, but you know what, it's, you know, it is what it is. And I've got plenty of time and to learn and to advance in this field. But yeah, the whole time we were working on this project, all I could think was, I wish I was like a 19-year-old with like no responsibilities again. You know what I mean? So that's what I would put in.
I think technically the hardest part of the app for me, I primarily stayed in the Angular portion. You know, some of it's the design, you know, you're like a pixel off and you can tell, and that, you know, that's frustrating. But I think some of it's with the, I think the hardest part for me, and something I'm still kind of wrapping my head around, is the routing. You know, when you log in, you go here and just kind of connecting all those. That's something I'm still kind of wrapping my head around. So I would probably stick with Angular routing for what was most difficult for me on this.
is that also because you were balancing React and how it does it at work at the same time?
Yeah, some of that, and you know, writing Node Lambda code. You know, we deployed with Azure, and at my apprenticeship we use AWS. So like it's just kind of juggling all that as well at the same time. So.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with that too, just because I've been working at my job with completely different stuff than what we learned. And then so, as somebody who's still learning, going back and forth can definitely be kind of discombobulating.
Different languages. I would say, for me, it's just getting used to the idea that sometimes something that you did one day just sort of disappears or goes crazy the next day for no reason that you can find, and just tracking that down. And then GitHub, I hate to say that because it's such a, it's such the basic for coding, but that, I never, I feel like I never can learn enough when it comes to GitHub. And I kept trying it through different applications and just confusing myself. Like, well, maybe this one will work better or that one will work better. But now I've totally rolled back to old school command line, and I'm happy.
That's one thing we're definitely doing a little more of now at Nexul Academy is we're having more Git workshops on some kind of regular basis for people in the program, for whether you're interested later, or if you've already completed it. It's something you keep coming back to when you want more practice.
I will be there.
Anyone else have a question?
Is your site fully functioning now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Well, so there's still a few things I need to clear up with SSL for some reason. So it's saying that it's unsecure, and I mentioned before, I think I have some sort of bug in the code related to if you use more than one Microsoft account. So I mean, but yeah, it's deployed, and we have the Roba www.roba.io domain, and we set that all up. So it's acting a little goofy for some reason with the SSL, and I still need to update some of that stuff on the Azure side. So sorry if you go to it and you have any issues, but yeah. So
It works on my machine.
That's a phrase where they'd be
like
talking about in the doctor class.
Joke, but it's true. It's literally true in this case.
So what's one of the biggest hurdles you three had to endure through this process?
I would agree with everything that everybody said. The splitting of the work time, like working your full-time job and having enough time to do this.
Like
the differences in the language.
I mean, specifically with the project.
Me specifically?
No, specifically about the project, not personally.
Like code-wise or tech-wise or that kind of thing. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Well, for me, I mean, I set up the authentication, and even though we did it, and we did an example project through the boot camp, authentication obviously was pretty tough, and it took me a while to get it all working and actually be able to actually log in. I remember the moment I had it running on my local machine, and it went through the entire login pattern and everything through auth using the JWT and all of that. That was like the best feeling. So, that's one of the things I love about this is just anytime I solve a problem like that, I get kind of like that little high from, just like, oh, I made it work, I've finally figured it out. And then, yeah, I guess that would just be my best answer for that one.
So another hurdle I had was sometimes material design, like if there's an error in your TypeScript code or your front end code, sometimes you won't exactly get a direct error or feedback for that. Material design will just break, and so that was there were a couple probably a couple of afternoons that I wasn't too happy with the Angular side of things, just because I wasn't getting good feedback on it, but able to iron that out and get through it. But you know, it can be challenging sometimes. So.
I think, Michelle, you said yours was mostly Git, I guess. That was the big one.
Well, I would say, yeah, there were some headaches there, but probably the biggest one, believe it or not, was that stupid login button. For some reason, it should be, you know, just a couple lines of code and no big deal. But because we were passing through so many filters, you know, Razor and everything else, somehow over the weekend, so not good timing, it kind of knocked everything out. I'm still not sure what happened, but it like knocked out my normalize. And so I think just being prepared to know that you're not prepared, like even when you think something's done, it can come back and bite you. So, you know, I put much harder things on that landing page, but for some reason the login was the thing that really caught me out.
I wanted to ask, how did you make the communication work? Did you have a private Slack group? How often a week did you get together in person or do virtual chats? And can you talk more about holding each other accountable?
Well, we tried to maintain, we were always, when we did our class, we always were on Monday and Wednesday. And then when we were transitioning from actually having class and having that class time, we switched to doing Sunday afternoons and then Wednesday evenings, where we were meeting still. And then when the whole quarantine came down, we tried to, and I think did a fairly good job maintaining that schedule via Zoom. There were a few times when it was sort of like, well, you know what, really the best thing I can do right now is code. And so we would say, okay, we're not going to meet tonight. We're going to get this done, and then we'll talk about it at our next meeting. But, you know, it was an unexpected change. And you know, I think everybody did a good job rising to the occasion. It took us a little while to get used to the discipline of meeting virtually. But, you know, we did it. We got there.
We did also use Trello and Slack as well for group communication.
And as for holding accountable, I don't know. I felt like everybody was really responsible with their own stuff. And we would talk about things in the Zoom, or who would take care of what. I don't know, that you guys had more stuff that was more tied together and tied into each other than I did. So you'd probably be better to speak to that. I was kind of like off in my own little frontline world.
And I think just like with any group project, I mean, there was, you know, obviously tons of room for improvement as far as, you know, communication and stuff. I mean, I personally learned a ton just from the communication aspect, and just being more precise with, you know, what you're communicating and status, and what you expectations, I guess, is the best way I'd put it. Like, you know, making sure everybody's aware of, you know, what each other's expectations are. I mean, there were definitely a few times where I thought Nevin knew, you know, what I expected on this thing, and plenty of times where it went just the other way, where he thought he'd explained something and was expecting me to do something, and I thought it was the other thing. And so, you know, that happened a few times, but we always, you know, just tried to do our best to just work through those and just be like, oh, okay, my mistake, and try to learn from that. And so in that regard, despite, you know, any speed bumps, we definitely kind of worked through that and just tried to, you know, just maintain momentum, I guess, is the best way I'd put it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had, of course, had the login thing, and I just completely forgot. like we talked about it in a Zoom thing. I didn't write it down or anything. And so we were getting really close. And it's like, where's that login button? I'm like, whoops.
Yeah. So, it's, everything didn't go perfectly, but, we all, like I said, learned a lot through the whole process. And at least, if it tells you anything, we plan on continuing to, work on this project and do more with it, so that I think that tells you that, we got along pretty well and that we're gonna, so I feel like that speaks a lot to it.
Roughly how many hours would you say you put into the project per week?
And that's what, just the team project?
God, that's a hard
Yeah,
one.
just a team project.
So random for me. Like there were times where it was really intense and I was like doing it most of the weekend or whatever. And then there were times when I was like,
well, just give me an average.
What? Yeah, give me an average.
Well, our timeline was a little different because we were pushed out so far. I think if it was the original deadline, it would probably be something closer to probably like 4 hours a week, maybe 5 hours a week or something like that on average. With this different timeline though, it's probably been down to like 2 probably on average per
I would
person.
say mine was more than that because
You would say yours is more than that?
Yeah, it took me longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I feel like your question really kind of leads me to thinking about, one thing that I've noticed with myself anyway personally is that it takes me a little while to kind of like get some momentum and then kind of get really dialed into something. And so there was a lot of times where I was like, I'll sit down, let me see if I can put 45 minutes into this. Let me see if I can put in like an hour into this. And then I'd hit that hour and I'd be like, man, I'm just now starting to be like actually achieving something and I need to keep going. But like, I've got this other thing I got to do, or, okay, well, let me push that other thing aside and let me try to stick with this. That was a huge struggle for me personally. So I feel like on average, I think Nevin's probably right. I probably tried to put in like maybe 6 hours a week or something into the project, but I think for me, what worked best was trying to carve out as much time in one straight stretch as possible, like a 3-hour stretch here or a 3 hour, rather than just trying to get an hour in here, an hour in there. For me personally, that really just did not work. And so it would almost end up being like a wasted 45 minutes or a wasted hour because it would take me that long to kind of get back into the mindset of like, okay, where was I? And, kind of get my footing again.
I think someone else had a question.
I have a question. I'm Hasmik. I know Michelle from Launch Code. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. So we went together to Launch Code Coder Girl program. She was very hardworking and she was working very hard and doing nice. So I just wanted to say congrats on completing the project, the course.
You.
Yes, it was nice seeing you here. I just want.
Woman, she speaks 5 languages.
Yes.
Yeah, and we used to laugh sometimes about it, like, well, why can we speak all these languages and this coding language is so hard?
Yes, coding is hard too. I wish I could speak like Russian. I speak Russian, German. I wish I could do the same in programming, but programming is really hard.
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't have so much time with my family and kids to put so much time. I wish someone, I think Nevin told Ryan that I wish I would be 19 years old, then it would be much easier. But
yeah,
when you have family, kids, and you are responsible for them, so you have so little time for yourself. But I'm trying, still trying. And recently I started learning Angular by myself, but I did coursework in Launch Code using React, and I found out that React was much easier. how would you compare React framework to Angular? It's really Angular more difficult, or it's just for me? I don't know.
You know, I would honestly say I kind of was kicking and screaming because I actually really liked React, and I built another slideshow in React. And React's something that's easy to research and Google, like just Googling, show me some great React websites, and they'll be like really unique and really creative. And I didn't have that experience with Angular. They're out there. It just wasn't as easy for me to find. So I was kind of like kicking and screaming a little bit about Angular, but I really kind of think Angular's got it going on when you're trying to learn it. It's got all these tutorials, and you know, once you get used to the lay of the land and sort of the mapping and everything, I think it would really work with your engineer brain. I really do.
Oh, thank you.
And it's got a lot of like, you know, I sometimes if I just have a little bit of time or want to code like a little bit, I'll go on and go into some of their tutorials, and I definitely learn a little bit more every time. And React, I think, was harder to find that stuff. It wasn't as centralized.
Oh.
You know, it was great if you knew what you were doing and you were just going through that. But when you got into trouble, it was, you know, or you wanted to grow it a little bit. I think it was that part. I think is easier through Angular, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes. I need to.
But yeah, get on there and do their tutorials, their tour of heroes, and like I can't do that enough.
Yes, actually, I worked on Tour of Heroes. It was not easy for me, but probably I need to go deeper and spend more time.
Keep doing it, and all of a sudden you'll be like, "Oh, okay, I see how these fit together."
Thank you. Yes, I'm still continuing. So thank you and congrats again, Michelle and Ryan, Nevin. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. We really appreciate the comments.
Yes, of course.